Hello, ladies, and welcome back to Reflect. This is our 11th week of Bible study, which is amazing that you stuck in there and you're committed to learning together, growing in community, and growing closer to the Lord. Sometimes you don't realize what just being there and being a part of it really is all about, and you are showing an example to others to stick with it and really just continue to be a part of a group that's on purpose growing together. And not only that, but you're holding others accountable, because when they see you engaging and doing the homework, and they see you showing up and being part of the Reflect night, they are held accountable to either being there or not being there. And sometimes there is godly conviction that comes along with seeing a godly example. And so thank you, ladies, for being part of this and being diligent for your 11th week. So since I brought it up, we're going to go ahead and get started. This week we're going to be talking about our influence on others. We're really talking about our education, where we get it, and then how we give it to others. So I just want to pray for us and then get to it. And God, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for giving us your guidance on our godly influence, on the influence we have on others and the influence we receive from others. I just pray that through this time, you would speak specifically to each one of our hearts and just show us the way in which you want us to grow. Pray these things in your name. Amen. Okay, so remember how this series all started was because of this article I read from the Barna Group that said there's a severe decline in people's buy-in to living a godly life. In San Diego specifically, 51% of people have chosen to turn away from their Christian moral standard of living and choose to follow their own moral standard of living. And that just wrecks me whenever I think about it, because my son, London, he is about to go to school. And up until now, I've chosen his teacher. I know her personally. I've chosen the people that he's in school with. I at least know all of them. I know what to expect from them. And I've chosen for him to be influenced by them. And I know what he's doing every single day. And pretty soon, in August, September, he's going to be going into a situation where I don't get to choose the teacher. I don't get to influence her on what she's teaching my kids. I don't get to choose the parents or the other kids. And 51% of them are going to be influencing him based on a set of principles that I don't personally want for my kids. And I have to surrender that. But I do have some responsibility in it. So we're going to talk about it. What is our influence really? What really is it? And influence is how we affect or alter the conduct, thought, or character of another. And that's pretty crazy, right? Like, we know that we can influence people by our words and actions, but to actually be able to alter their character is huge, because altering someone's character is altering how they will be influencing others. So by your direct influence on one person, you could be causing an indirect reaction to who knows how many people. And sometimes that's really great, right? You can see a widespread giving back to the community, or a widespread sharing of love, or pouring out to others. Or you can see a widespread of insecurity, competition, and all sorts of different things that you don't want to be the catalyst for. Romans 5:19 says, "For as by the one man's disobedience, the many were made sinners," talking about Adam, "so by the one man's obedience, the many will be made righteous," talking about Jesus. Now, this verse has two parts that is talking about Adam and talking about Jesus, but this verse is talking about us, because we are created human. We did, because of Adam and Eve's sin, all Romans 3:23 says that for all men are born sinners. And that means that we are human. We are born sinners just like Adam, and we are made in the image of Jesus. So we have the opportunity to express him. And so by our disobedience, many can be continued into their sin nature. Or by our one person's obedience, many can be led into this positive, influential, world-changing situation. You and I can be world changers because of one act of obedience. And that's amazing. We don't think of ourselves that way. I loved my Bible translation, and some of you may have it. It's Joyce Meyer's she just adds some commentary and just some different breaking down, and she gives us deeper insight into this verse. It says, it explains that disobedience is not just doing a negative act. It's failing to hear, heedlessness, or carelessness. So not just choosing something bad, but failing to hear the warning at all. That means sometimes we're not positioning ourselves to receive the education that we need to receive. We're not putting ourselves in the position to hear the warning. Sometimes we on purpose don't go to a place we need to go to because we don't want to hear what we're going to hear if we're there. And that's disobedience. Not positioning ourselves on purpose to grow is failing to hear. That's disobedience. Thinking we're just all right where we are. Okay, so why should we care about our influence on others? First, because of the fate of our own souls. Some of you may have heard Pastor Josh's sermon recently about forgiveness. And he said forgiveness is not about the other person. It's not about helping them feel better. It really is about the care of your own soul. When we forgive, our hearts are changed. Our hearts are nourished. And it's the same with our influence on others. We want to positively influence others because our heart cannot bear the weight of being that one failed opportunity that could spread into wildfire. Our hearts need us to be a positive influence. And then two, because of the fate of others. 1 Corinthians 9:22-23 says, "To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings." We have to guard our influence. We have it. Every single one of us is an influence, no matter how introverted you are, no matter how few people you see. If you work from home and you stay at home and the only time you get out is for this Bible study, or you're doing this Bible study all by yourself, you are influencing others, either by your lack of doing something or by the things that you're doing. So since we do all have influence, we have to guard our influence. Matthew 5:13-16 talks about salt and light. "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." This verse tells us about two things. It tells us about the price of a bad influence and the reward of a good influence. So we're going to talk about the bad influence first. Sometimes we forget that God is serious. And this verse reminds us that he is serious. When we lose our saltiness, we are no longer good for anything. We are no longer good for the kingdom when we are not influencing people in the right way. And that's what it's saying is if you are salt and you lose your saltiness, you're no longer beneficial for the task you were created for. You're no longer beneficial in pushing forward the kingdom. And so our bad influence renders us useless as our created self. And that's crazy, but you know what? God doesn't tell us these things to condemn us. He cares so much, like I said earlier, about our hearts, our souls. He cares so much about it that he says you cannot lose your saltiness. You must guard your influence so that your heart will be healed. Your heart will be healthy. Your heart will be pure and filled with blessings and abundance. So what are some of the ways we can uncover the truth about our bad influence? Because some of us might think, I'm not doing anything bad. Proverbs 22:24-25 says, "Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared." I don't know. I've definitely been this person. Like, are any of you that person that gets a hot temper like that? Are you the one that you're easily angered and you make sure that whoever's around you knows about it, even if it's just your kids? Proverbs says, do not make friends with that person because you may learn their evil ways. And I think all the time, like, oh my goodness, God may have kept me from friendships because he was protecting the women I wanted to be in life with from learning my evil ways. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals." And we've seen this, right? Adam and Eve. Adam, by being in company with Eve, he fell into the same sin trap that she was in. And because of Adam, the whole rest of us were born with a sinful nature. Delilah influenced Samson, and eventually he lost all of his powers and his ability to influence others. Solomon had 700 wives who turned his heart towards other gods. And these things are really crazy. They say one really great thing about women and one really bad thing about women. The great thing is we are so influential. God positioned us in a way that we can influence the entire world. We can influence a man who's so powerful to be rendered useless. We can take a man and distort his views about something so that he turns his heart toward other gods. We have the power in our hand to do that, and that's bad. We are able to do some bad things, but we have that same power to do for the good and influence in really great ways. So the Bible gives us these historical references, but we have them today too. And I've heard stories of dear friends of mine struggling with eating disorders. And not only just really bad eating disorders, but just bad body image and insecurity and lack of confidence because of very important women in their lives sowing those seeds of insecurity, talking poorly about themselves physically, eating poorly to try and keep themselves looking a certain way. I've had very close family members influenced by very poor parenting decisions. There's a long line of one part of my family of physical and sexual abuse over and over again because the mom saw it from her mom, and then her daughter saw it from her, and now she has 2 young daughters that she's influencing in the very exact same way. And for 4 generations, you see the effects of seeing the woman you look to with an unhealthy influence on you, and you see it destroy generations. You see it destroys generations. I saw growing up the influence of peer pressure. I saw people do drugs because they thought it was cool, and I see those exact same people having ruined lives, no longer having custody of their children, no longer being able to have a positive influence in this world, be in jail because when they were in high school, it was cool to do drugs because somebody pressured them to do something because it was cool. They took that influence. And you see your influence doesn't just impact those you immediately interact with. My great-grandmother did not intend that her great-granddaughter would be sexually and emotionally abused. But because of a line that she went down, I see that in my cousins, and I see that happening, and it's devastating. So those are easy to spot, right? Our sin nature, infidelity, bad things in our life like drugs, alcohol, body image, those are really easy. But then there's some that fall under that category I was telling you about, failing to hear. And these are hard because these are the types of things that we have to really exercise in us. They're not natural. They're not things we're always thinking about. For example, my son talks in his sleep, which I love because I talk in my sleep. And it makes me feel like we have a thing. He looks just like my husband and not at all like me. So anytime there's something that I can connect with, I'm like super excited. But he talks in his sleep, and I love to listen to him. And sometimes I'll take video. I know, don't. I do it for myself. I did share it with some people. Anyway, that's not the point. Point is, one night he's having this one dream, and he's crying. And I wake him up, and he tells me this dream, and it's just a crazy dream. It's about getting wings and flying over the water and, all sorts of stuff. Well, the next night, he goes to stay the night with his friend. Well, I've been so enamored by the fact that we have this thing in common that I have not considered to hear the warning that a 4-year-old talking to sleep might be scary to another 4-year-old. So he stays the night with his friend Cruz, Pastor Josh's son, and he starts to talk in his sleep about spiders crawling all over the room, to which Cruz flips out, and it ruins everybody's night. Everybody's up, they're all sleeping in their bedroom, the parents' bedroom, and it's a destroyed night. I failed to see past what I thought was cool and fun to something that was potentially dangerous. I didn't give information to their parents to let them know, hey, my son talks in his sleep. It could be scary, and so I want to make sure that your son's protected from something my son's not doing on purpose. So those are some things. Unfortunately, the very next night, they are riding with their son in the car, playing VeggieTales, which, why would that be bad? VeggieTales is amazing. It's Christian. They're only going to sow in great things. But they're talking about fear and not being afraid of the boogeyman. Well, he didn't know what the boogeyman was. And so that night, he wakes up freaking out, scared of the boogeyman. And it's like, wait a minute. I let him listen to a Christian song, and it was supposed to be good for him. But as a parent, you sometimes fail to hear what might be interpreted differently for your kid. And so we have to do that. And one of the things that, as I was studying, that I came across that was super fun, I mean, sort of super fun, but I was going to talk about secondhand smoking and, go down. I'm sure you can imagine where I was going to go with that. And God kind of opened my eyes to something different, which was really fun. But I came across this thing called secondhand emotions. And it's actually called catching a bad mood. And it's this phenomenon where someone can be in a great mood, but when put near someone who's in a bad mood, if they are particularly susceptible or on the brink of emotional change, they can actually catch the bad mood and be in a bad mood themselves. And so sometimes don't we think, like, I deserve my bad mood right now. I'm on my period. I'm in a bad mood. I'm allowed to do that. Had a really rough day today. I'm allowed to be in a bad mood. I just interacted with one of my coworkers who was clearly in a bad mood. I was like, you need to go get some rest. And they were like, I've been working for the last 13 hours. I'm allowed to be in a bad mood and to express myself the way I want to express myself. We forget that while, yes, we can make the choice to behave however we want, the responsibility is ours to know that someone else can catch hold of what we put out there. And it could turn bad for them. Maybe they go home with their bad mood and they get in a dangerous situation at home. Maybe they get in their car with that bad mood and they get in a wreck. Maybe they go to a bar or to somewhere else and they make bad decisions because of a bad mood that they caught from us. That is a big deal. We have to guard our influence. So let's talk about the second part of that verse. Verse 16 says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. There is great power in good influence. Great power. Just as bad as it is to hear what bad influence can do, there's great power in our good influence. We can actually win souls for Jesus through our positive influence. Just as somebody can catch our bad mood, they can catch our good mood. Somebody who may have been on the brink of destruction in their marriage can get a positive influence from you and make a change. Sometimes you don't even know that you have changed the course of someone's life because they didn't go down the bad path. And I was trying to teach my son about heroes once. And I told him, I was like, the true heroes are the ones that prevent the bad thing from even happening. We celebrate heroes who save people from destruction, that they're in the grips of the enemy and they rip them out. But I think the true heroes are the ones that don't get the celebration of the save because they don't let the person go down the bad path to be saved from. They make sure they never go down that bad path. They sow goodness and good influence in them to where they won't go to that bad place. We can be those kind of heroes. 1 Peter 2:12 says, keep your conduct among the Gentiles, that's just other people around you, honorable, so that when they speak against you, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. This means that do so much good that when someone decides to be angry at the church or at Christians or at women or at whatever it is that you're doing, when they look at you, they say, wait a minute, I can't say a bad thing about that group of people because this person, you, me, we are representing ourselves in this good influence, this godly influence, and they can't say anything bad about the larger group of people that we're involved with because we're representing them. And that's what we're doing. Proverbs 10:17 says, whoever heeds instruction is on the path to life. The path to life, that's the living the way God intended us to live. Galatians 1:24 is my favorite. Paul's talking and he says, and they praised God because of me. And wouldn't you just love people to say that about you? And I'm not talking about the arrogant, boastful, Paul didn't say they praised me because of all the great things I did. They said because of what I did, they praised God. They weren't talking about me. They weren't talking about anybody else. They were talking about God. And we want to live a life that says, that's what a Christian is like. That's what a godly woman looks like, that person. I am praising God because of the way that person walks. Many of us walk away from conversations and we feel like, man, there's no way that person is praising God because of me. Actually, like, all I did was vent, and maybe they caught my bad mood, and maybe they didn't, and maybe they just had to hear about it, and that didn't uplift them. I didn't encourage them to a better place. And one of my most fun memories, all growing up, my mom was overweight. She actually lost 100 pounds a few years back, and she still struggles, but she's definitely on a better path for her own health. But all growing up, I never, ever heard her be dissatisfied with her body. She didn't talk about how great it was, but she didn't say she was fat. She didn't constantly touch and feel, and, she never looked in the mirror and went, gosh, I look terrible. She didn't. Every day, she got up and she put makeup on. She did her hair. She wore pretty clothes. She dressed herself and behaved as a beautiful person. And my dad treated her that way. He saw her get ready and smile and get dressed, and he said, that's a beautiful woman. And he never said anything negative about her physical features. And so I grew up never hearing that. I never thought they were dissatisfied. I didn't even know that it wasn't a desirable thing in our culture because it's not what I saw at home. And as I got older and I realized what my mom had done, I wonder what that did for me growing up. I know it had to do something. I know it had to do something that was really good, because I know that you can catch this bad situation. Like, I could have gone down have issues with eating disorders or body image or insecurity, but I didn't. So what did it do? And recently my son started playing soccer, and my husband is the soccer coach, but it's on Sundays, so I can't be there because I'm working at church. And so there's another woman who is the team mom, and I'm so excited. I leave church, I head over there, and I'm gonna be so excited. We're gonna have all these new friends. They live near us, and it's not what happened. As a matter of fact, I don't really fit in with these other women. They definitely are not interested in becoming friends with me, and it hurts my feelings, and I don't understand, and I wonder, what's going on, and why is this happening? And it's amazing. This thing happened, and I realized what my mom did for me. She showed me that I am beautifully and wonderfully made the way that God gifted me to be. He made me who I am for a wonderful reason, and no matter what anyone else says to me, thinks about me, looks at me like, feels about me, doesn't change that. And on Sundays, I go there, and inside, I feel sad. Inside, I really want for the next time for them to be like, hey, how's it going? So great to see you. And that never happens. But every Sunday, I cheer for London, and I cheer for Wes, and I yell, and I'm so excited. And I'm able to live as the godly, beautiful, wonderful woman that God created me to be, despite how I feel inside. Despite how I feel inside. And my mom did that for me. That's a legacy she left me by living as a beautiful person on the inside, even though she may not have felt that way on the outside all the time. Okay, so we know we're influencers, the cost of bad influence and the reward of good influence. So how do we get on the path to good influence? Because a lot of times we start out with, I need to stop doing this, or I need to start doing this, and we fail. People who stop smoking or drinking or doing drugs or eating poorly or exercising or whatever it is fail so often because we immediately think, I'm doing this thing wrong, I need to do it right. And we fail because we're starting at the end. And God actually gives us a path. 1 Timothy 4:12 and 13 says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. And that doesn't mean age. That just means where you're at in a situation. So let's say that gossip is your problem, and you're gossiping all the time. But you've decided that you're going to change that around. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are not yet where you want to be with your verbalization with your friends. But set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. And this is not just a checklist. Okay, speech check, living check. No, this is a pathway. And I'm going to explain it to you why. But first is speech, then living or your actions, loving, faith, and purity. So speech, the first thing is just like I mentioned with the Sundays. Proverbs 16:24, gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Sometimes we have to speak words that we do not feel, that we do not believe, that are not yet to come. I've told you about Romans 5:19 earlier, but sometimes when I'm going to anchor on a passage or on a verse, I go and I look at the background to make sure I know exactly what I'm talking about. Because sometimes we'll stick on a verse thinking we know what we're talking about, and we don't always know. So I'm looking at Romans 4:17, and it talks about how God created something out of nothing. Something that was non-existent, God made it into existence. And so we have to behave that way sometimes. We have to speak something that we know God is going to provide. We have to behave in a way we don't feel because we trust that it's what God did. I have to behave as though I'm beautifully, wonderfully made on Sundays at the soccer games, even though I feel and see others react that I'm not. Sometimes our words are the very first step we have to take, because look what happens. As we begin to speak out positive words, we begin to say them, we begin to feel them. And when we begin to feel them, we begin to live them out. It's amazing when that happens. 1 Peter 2:12, keep your conduct among the Gentiles, the people, honorable. So when they speak against you, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. As we speak, we begin to feel. And when we feel, we begin to act. And then when we act, we cause others to be able to praise God because of our actions. It's so amazing what happens when we obey in our speech, even though we don't feel it or see it. And then all of a sudden we begin to feel it, and it becomes natural. We begin to act it out. We begin to live in that confidence. We begin to live in security. And what happens? It's amazing what happens as we act. We begin to love the things that we didn't love before. Isn't it funny when you fall in love with someone that the oddities about them are things that you just love about them? I just love that birthmark on them. I just love when he says these words wrong. I just love when my child, doesn't say the right things and has a funny accent. You begin to love those things about yourself and about others. We hear things about love your neighbors, love your enemies, love because I first loved you. And we think, yeah, right. I am not going to love my enemies. I am really good at loving all of your enemies. I really am. God gave me a heart for the oppressor, but not for my oppressor. I have the hardest time loving my enemies, but it's amazing. You begin to speak truth. Then you actually begin to live it out. Your actions begin to follow suit with your words. Then you actually, supernatural, something happens in your heart where you begin to love that thing about yourself or that person. And it's just amazing. I see it in people all the time. I see it in myself. I see it in my husband. And he's not naturally hospitable, but as he begins to do things and say things in the way of hospitality that I love, I begin to see him actually really enjoy having 100 people around all the time. I see him enjoy having 8 people stay the night in our house for a week. And then I see him want my mom, who I want, to come and live at our house. Like, he instigates these things because he loves it. And then the most amazing thing happens next. And each thing is so amazing because it's God, it's only God. But out of loving something, we're able to step into an area that's scary. Loving your enemy is scary. Loving your insecurity is scary. When we find ourselves loving our enemies and loving our insecurity, all of a sudden we realize we are standing in the middle of the ocean, trusting God, and faith has come up into a place that it was not existent. Love has come up into a place that it's not existent. Our actions have come into a place that is not existence because we first decided to say, this is what God's going to bring here. I'm going to love that person. I'm going to step into a place that I don't have faith in right now because I'm going to have faith there. We find ourselves with faith. And Matthew 22:37 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Faith is the ultimate love. When you're in that place of love and you're in that scary place of love, the ultimate amount of love, which is faith in the Lord, it's just there out of your obedience to take that first step. And then this last one, it gives me the chills when I read it right now. It gave me the chills when I wrote it. It gave me the chills every time I've spoken it so far. But that thing that you woke up one day and said, I can't do that thing any longer. I'm doing terrible at that thing. I'm impure. My heart's broken. It's dirty. It's ugly. That thing is made pure. Your heart is changed. You don't have a desire for that thing anymore because you've spoken it, you've lived it out, you've fallen in love with that path, you found yourself stepping out in faith, and then like God does, he makes all things new. And that dirty, dark, veiled space has been made pure. It is white as snow. It is no longer there. And you wake up and you go, I don't do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I love this place of faith and purity that I'm in. I just love that God gives us this instruction, this pathway to faith. And I pray that you'll go back and you'll look at 1 Timothy and you'll look through it and you'll begin to speak truth into an area that's non-existent right now. You'll see that place in your life that truth isn't reigning, and you'll make the first step to speak it, to trust the Lord, just as he tells us, enter my gates with thanksgiving and my courts with praise. He says that because he will provide for your every need. He will make the desires of your hearts be made real. Those places that something's not existent yet, he will put it in your hands. But you must first enter his courts with thanksgiving. Thanksgiving because he is already done the thing that's not yet. Ladies, I just want to pray with you. God, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for giving us your word to be able to sit together in a group and in community and learn and grow closer to you. God, I pray that you remind us the cost of bad influence and remind us of the reward of good influence. And God, you give us a glimpse into the fact that we can change lives. God, I thank you for each woman today that is listening to this, that, Lord, they're already beginning to know the things that you want them to speak into existence, God, because you've already brought it. You've already made it path for them. God, I pray all these things in your name. Amen. Have a great evening, ladies.